Hello, everyone, and welcome teachers, students, and many EF staffers. We are so glad you've decided to join us virtually for this exciting event today in celebration of Veterans Day with our very special esteemed guest, Lindsay Dearing. My name is Darby, and I support educational partnerships for EF, and I'm joined by my colleague, Courtney, who works to ensure all of our customers have incredible experiences out on the road when they're out on tour. So Courtney will be co-moderating the event with me today as we hear Lindsay's story. And so Lindsay, an enormous thank you to you for your service to this country and sharing your story with teachers and students far and wide today. We are thrilled to be in an exclusive partnership with the Honor Flight Network that has afforded this opportunity, especially on Veterans Day, which is truly a celebration to honor America's veterans for their patriotism, their love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. So Lindsay, we salute you. Quick reminder, although we can't see the rest of you, please type in any questions you might have into the Q&A feature during our time together, and Courtney will be keeping an eye on that, and we will save time at the end to go through those questions. And so with that said, welcome, Lindsay. We will turn this over to you to share your story. And if you don't mind starting at the beginning, that would be awesome. So before we get to your incredible 12-year career in the active duty U.S. Army, please share a bit about where you're from, your family, and your upbringing, and perhaps how you got to where you are today, which for everyone on the call is serving as a professional staff member on the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, and she's also received distinctions through her service, which include the Knowlton Award, the Bronze Star Medal, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, and the Combat Action Badge. Wow. Lindsay, thanks so much for being here, and we'll flip this over to you.
Thank you, Darby. Huge thanks to you and EF and for Courtney for you guys co-hosting. It is such a privilege to be on this Zoom call with everyone. And I have to tell you, I've been bragging to all of my friends and colleagues that this was something that I get to do today. And there's nowhere else that I would rather be. I just feel very, very honored and really appreciate you reaching out and asking me to talk about my story. And my story goes a little something like this. It's I was born in a very small town in Southern Ohio called Jackson, and I was never the smartest of the smart in any of my classes. I essentially used school as a social platform, which was a little different back then. But what I will say is that I grew to love school. I graduated high school in 2002. And I remember sitting in my senior year English class, and that's when 9/11 happened. And obviously it had a huge impact on our country as a whole. But at that point in time, it didn't necessarily impact me in my life, meaning that I didn't really have anyone in my family in New York. And I also didn't have anyone in my family that was in the military. So I went on to college, and I was in college for a semester. And that's when I met an Army recruiter. And it was the end of the first semester, and he was telling me about all of these amazing things that you can do while you're in the Army. And he really sold me. And so I decided to, leave college for that point in time and join the Army. And I went to basic training, and I tell you, basic training, I had a great time. A lot of people, it's hit or miss. A lot of people have a hard time. They, weren't necessarily prepared for what they were going to experience, but I, for one, for the most part, had a great time. I really enjoyed how everything that you did was as a team. I really enjoyed the discipline that they instilled in us. And I overall, except for the very big weird glasses that they made us wear, those weren't very fun. So my first duty station was Germany, which was very neat. And then from there, and I had the job of initially a radio person, essentially. So I would do communications. I would put antennas up so that we could communicate in austere work environments. I didn't love that job very much. And so I eventually reclassed to be an all source intelligence analyst. But I did 4.5 years cumulative, not consecutive, in Afghanistan, all over Afghanistan. And that was incredible in and of itself. I learned to love and deeply appreciate the people of Afghanistan and what they've been through over centuries of war, and really am proud of the things that we did as a country for that country. And so I hold a really special place in my heart for the people of Afghanistan. All of that said, I got to do some really cool things when I was in the Army. I got to jump out of airplanes. A lot of people pay really good money to go and jump out of airplanes, and I personally got paid by the Army to do it. And that was pretty neat. I became what is referred to as a jump master. And so this is when you get to facilitate others jumping out of an aircraft safely. So I jumped 31 times. And I tell you, my body feels it now, but it was really, really cool and super fun to be able to do that with fellow service members. And my 31st jump, actually, it was Veterans Day weekend in 2012. And I wasn't even supposed to be on the jump, but I elbowed my way into getting on that jump. And I ended up having a very bad landing. Everything about the jump was pretty outside of the norm for a number of reasons. However, I didn't really think much of it. And then that night when I came out, it was pitch black, and I checked my parachute a couple of times to make sure it was there. And then when I hit the ground, it was very painful. And I ended up breaking 4 of my 5 metatarsals in my left foot. And the Army had to put in quite a bit of work to fix my foot. I had to endure 4 surgeries, and now I have permanent nerve damage in my foot. Initially, they told me that I would never run again and that I would never walk normal again. However, I do both of those things. I don't run far or fast, but I can still do it. And it's honestly the discipline and the values and the motivation and all of those really good principles that the Army instilled in me that make me believe that I still can. And that's how I've kind of made it through that really tough time in my life. I wanted to stay in the Army forever, and unfortunately I wasn't able to do so because of all of the secondary effects of my foot trauma. And so I was medically retired in January of 2015 after 12 years. And after that, went ahead and used an amazing benefit that you get for joining the military called the GI Bill. A lot of people have heard of this, in which the military give you a benefit of free education upon honorable service in the military. So I utilized my GI Bill to go back to college, and I ended up getting 3 degrees within 4 years. I was very busy in school, and I loved it. I am most proud of my master's degree. I got to go to Georgetown and study policy in the hub of it all here on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. So that was kind of what brought me here to Washington, D.C. And since then, I have worked for the American Legion. I was lobbying for them on Capitol Hill for policies that would benefit veterans. And then my next job was my current job, and I work in the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. And my portfolio consists of toxic exposure, transition, as well as veteran treatment courts, and veteran homelessness. And so basically I write policies and laws and working for the senator so that we can govern how the Department of Veterans Affairs treats veterans for generations to come. So it's what I like to call my dream job. And I feel lucky to do it every day. I like to say that, I don't get to be in the Army anymore and take care of soldiers, but now I can take care of veterans. And these are my battle buddies and the people that I care most about. So I feel very privileged to be where I am. And I feel equally as privileged to talk to you all today. And so I am happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Thank you, Lindsay. That was so great to hear how you got interested in joining the military and then even just the different jobs that you actually had within that 12 years. I feel like, you wouldn't necessarily expect that you could shift so much within the military. So I think that's awesome for the audience at home to have an idea of the different kind of roles that one could have in service. So thank you for that. Um, we have a few questions that I would love to kind of start off with. One thing is, while you were away, so you mentioned that, you did 4 years in Afghanistan, so clearly very far away from your family and friends at home. How did you stay in touch with them while you were abroad?
Well, I would say, our methods of communication have certainly evolved, and they were certainly evolving quickly while I was in the Army. I would say my first deployment, that was 2005, 2006 timeframe, and people were just starting to become familiarized with email, and it was starting to become kind of a regular daily event. And so we would email, but not as frequently. But we would use calling cards, and we would have to call, we'd have to sit in line, and we would have to wait to utilize a phone, and they had time limits on the phones. And then we would use a calling card, and we would call the switch in Bahrain, and then they would connect us with our calling card number, and then that's how we would get to the United States of America. So it's a very long process, but it was always worth it. I mean, you think about Thanksgiving or Christmas, and you basically just sit in line for the phone all day just so that you can call home. But what I will say too is that being in the military, the people that you serve with are like your family as well. So it was always like you felt like you had family no matter where you were.
I think that's really nice. It is funny how it was only so long ago, but having to wait in line for a payphone is something that there was potentially people on this call that have never had to do that. So I think that's a really cool fact. But I think that's really nice that the
Make me
people
feel
that
old.
no, listen, I'm noticing in museums now they have payphones. I think that that's a really interesting thing to think about. It's not that long ago that they were on corners.
Yes.
But I think it's really nice that you, while of course you're away from your biological family and your friends, you're able to have the secondary family with you for those big events like Christmas, as you mentioned, or other holidays. So that's really lovely. One thing that when you were speaking about how you got into the military, you mentioned that no one else in your family had ever done that before. And I was just wondering, was your family surprised? Like, what was their reaction to when you said, I'm going to join the Army?
No one believed me. Even my mom. My mom was like my best friend and my number one fan. But I'll tell you, even in the beginning, she was like, "Wait, what? I'm sorry, I don't understand." And so, just kind of educating them on even what the military is and what the military does over the years was really fun. And luckily now there's a lot more people in my family that are in the military, so that makes me feel proud. But yeah, there was a lot of skepticism when I first joined, but I showed them.
No, I think that's fair. It's cool to kind of blaze your own trail as well in your family and not just follow in what everyone else has done. And clearly you inspired some other people to kind of change their potential journey. So that's really neat. In terms of the people that your family abroad, your military family, do you keep in touch with many of those people? Like, do you get to see some of them in your current work, or have you lost touch with the people that you've served with?
No, they're friends forever. I'll tell you, I've got a couple of gals. There's one gal that what I like to say, grew up with in the Army, and we hit every major milestone together. We got promoted together numerous times. We deployed together 3 times, and she's one of my nearest and dearest friends. I was in her wedding. She, named her daughter after me. Just those types of things. We're from, different sides of America. She's Hispanic, I'm Caucasian. Like, no, in any other normal circumstance, we might not have been friends. We might not have ever met each other. And now she feels like family to me. And so, yes, we keep in contact and we talk very, very often. And she's even now stationed close to me. She just switched from the Army to the Space Force. And so now she's here close to DC, and I get to see her a lot more often. And then, there's numerous other people who I served with, and you can go a year, you can go 5 years without talking to each other. And when you see each other, you just have that bond. I mean, you deploy with someone, there's a bond like you can never understand, and it's unbreakable. And so, yeah, I would say, yeah, we definitely keep in touch, and it's a sense of camaraderie. And a lot of times you hear people talk about this. Sports teams have this, and they say if you do hard things together, it builds a bond. And so anybody that's on a sports team, like, you'll likely be friends with these people forever. These people will be your family, and that's kind of like the military. You go through really hard things together, and it creates a bond, and we like to call that camaraderie.
No, I think that's a great way to put it into perspective, for the young people on the call today. It's important to find those people, whether it is through sports or through something else. What do you think? I know that you mentioned that you've taken a lot of the learnings of your time in the military. You've learned, how to stay on a schedule, and it has helped you through your career, and you use different aspects of basic training even in your life and your current role. But what do you think your time in the military, how did that affect you, and what did you learn maybe about yourself that maybe changed who you were from when you first joined up to how you are today?
That's a really great question. I would say what the military taught me first and foremost is how strong I am. The things that you go through and endure, no matter what your job is, are hard. And you realize in that moment that you're capable, and you just have, they teach you how to not quit. And so in that, you learn how strong you are and what you really are capable of. And so I would say first and foremost, that's what they taught me. I would also say that I learned a lot of self-discipline, things like going to the gym, going for a run, being physically strong as well as mentally strong. And I would say, that's something that I would not have instilled in me had I not joined the military. Um, just, sort of things like that. From my specific job field, I was an intel analyst. And so I would essentially gather intel, gather information from people on the battlefield and other sources. And we would do predictive analysis on what the enemy was going to do. And then as an intel professional, we would brief our commanders on what the enemy might do. And then they could schedule operations around what the enemy might do. So from that, I learned how to brief very important people. I mean, these commanders are very important. And so, and I wasn't, but I mean, being able to just be in the same room with them was cool. And so from that, I took, again, I am strong and I am capable. And it has enabled me to be in the room with United States senators and to brief United States senators about veterans policy. So I think it just, gives you a little bit of confidence. I think that's how I would like to summarize what I gained and what it kind of did for me.
No, that's wonderful. And it's great that you were able to, in your work abroad and in the military, be able to gain skills that you could then use outside of that, right? I think sometimes some people think you can only learn one thing and then do it for that job, but skills are so transferable that's really awesome that you can actually look back to where you learned that skill and what you're doing, years later. That's awesome to be able to continue to use that. We had a question about your wanting to jump out of an airplane. Why? Some people on this call, I know Darby is terrified of heights. I'm sure there's lots of other people who are listening that are also scared. What made you want to do that? Uh,
Yeah. So my first deployment to Afghanistan, I was stationed with the 82nd Airborne Division, very famous Army unit, and they were all airborne. And I just thought they were the coolest people on the block, and I wanted to be like them. And so, excuse me. And so I re-enlisted in the Army to go to airborne school so that I could be in the 82nd Airborne Division. And it worked. I made it to the 82nd and got to jump out of airplanes. But what I do like to remind people is that the airplanes that you're jumping out of are not the best airplanes in the world. These are military airplanes. Sometimes they're held together by duct tape, or what we like to call 100-mile-an-hour tape. And so in a lot of instances, especially in combat, when you have to do a combat landing, which can be very scary, you'd probably rather just jump out.
okay, so it's a
Um,
necessity.
Speechless on the side. Lindsay, speechless.
Wow, no, that's cool. I personally have always thought jumping out of an airplane could be a cool thing. I know that Darby would disagree, but having to do it for your job is very different than choosing to do it for fun with some of your friends. So that's, and having done it over 30 times, like that is a lot of jumping. So you can
Well,
teach
I
all of
will
us one day.
say, jumping in the military is very different than jumping commercially. Commercially, you're strapped to someone normally, and the landing's very soft, like on a cloud or a pillow. Whereas in the military, you normally hit the ground like a sack of potatoes every single time. And you think about, the technology advancements and parachutes and things of that nature. So one might ask themselves, well, why does the military have those kind of parachutes to land softly? And here's why. When you think about the mission of jumpers, you're going into a combat environment, and when you jump, you want to get to the ground quickly, because otherwise you're going to probably engage in some enemy while you're in the air. So while there have been a lot of advancements in parachutes, the military still kind of goes old school in order to get to the ground as quickly as possible. So
That's good. That's good to know the difference. So, one other thing that I wanted to kind of come back to was you were talking about your time in Afghanistan, and that you really got to know the people of Afghanistan, and that you really have a fond memory of those people that you met over there. I think sometimes it's hard for us not involved in the military to understand that you might have opportunity to get to know the people that you're over there protecting, or even sometimes fighting against. What were some of the ways that you got to know the people over there, to really bring back that understanding of that people?
yeah, in a couple of ways. In the military, you do a lot of different things, and that's one of the things I love most about it. And so, in doing a lot of different things, sometimes you would be an escort for local nationals who would come onto the installation in order to provide a service for the military. And so they would help us clean, and they would help us do all sorts of things. And so you get to interact with them there. And then, I personally only went outside the wire via ground one time, but a lot of people are out and about in the communities every day, all day. And so I think that's another type of opportunity. But then I also worked in the field detention center. So this is where, prisoners are, so the bad guys. So I did intel support for that. And so I got to interact with them there. So I got to see, numerous types of Afghans, and what a message I would say is they're not all bad people. There's good people over there, and so I saw that firsthand. So
No, that's great. I think it's hard to sometimes have empathy when we're told that there is an enemy that we're fighting against. But of course, in every conflict throughout time, there are always, innocent bystanders that are there who are just trying to get through it. So it's nice that you're able to have seen both those sides and be able to share those stories with people who might not fully understand. That helps share empathy and create more of a warmer environment for everyone to, move towards peace, I think, in some way, which is something I think on Veterans Day that everyone takes a moment to think about. Because it is Veterans Day, this is, I would think, an important day for you. I know earlier today you got to be at Arlington National Cemetery at a memorial ceremony. What does this day mean to you? And is there anything that you do, annually to commemorate it from your perspective?
Thank you for that question. Honestly, I would love to take this point of privilege to talk about the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Veterans Day is a happy day. This is a day that we get to celebrate service for everyone who served and just celebrate the accomplishments of our military and all of those serving in our military, past, present, future. Today is a happy day. Normally, I like to do something active. Sometimes I'll go for a run. I've done that on the National Mall with a flag and some other veterans. I've done rucks before. I love to go to ceremonies. This morning was really amazing. The Vice President of the United States was there, amongst a lot of other folks from all over DC. So that was really neat. I've done some really cool stuff. But then, on the flip side is Memorial Day. And Memorial Day is not a happy Memorial Day. Memorial Day is a day of remembrance, and this is a day that we remember those who have died for our freedom. So that's more of a somber day. And so, I always try to make sure that I can explain the difference. While yes, we normally do get a federal holiday for Memorial Day, it's not always happy for everyone. So I like people to try and remember that, because those who have lost someone, it's probably not a happy day for them. So I like to make sure to try and explain the difference for everyone, because not everyone knows, not everyone has, military in their family, and it's not their fault. So I love to just be able to explain that difference. So thanks for that question. That's great.
Yeah, well, we were talking earlier about, different countries and how different countries, honor their military or remembrance. And I am Canadian on the team, and today in Canada, it's Remembrance Day. So that's more of the equivalent of a Memorial Day than a celebration. So it's just really interesting that both countries are celebrating something today or remembering something, but that there's a slight difference in terms of the kind of ceremonies that are happening in both countries. Quickly, as we wrap up, I just wanted to see, since we do have some young people on the call, do you have any advice or words of wisdom for young people before, we say goodbye today?
Absolutely. Service. So yes, I served in the military, but that's not the only kind of service. There's so many types of service that I personally respect very deeply. You can serve as a nurse, you can serve as a firefighter, a policeman, you can do public service, you can run for office. I personally believe that service is every American's responsibility. So just serving in the military isn't the only option. And so I would challenge everyone to find a way to serve your country in some type of way. But then I would also say, try everything in search of a passion, and never leave something worse than how you found it. Always try to make it a little bit better than what you found it. And my final piece would be, do things scared. I think that you can find very rewarding outcomes when you do things scared. So that's my little piece of advice.
Lindsay, wise words. Thank you so much. Happy Veterans Day to you. This has truly been an honor for all of us to have some time with you today and to just hear your really fascinating story. We are incredibly grateful for your service, and big thank you to everyone at home and in schools who have tuned in with us today to share in this memorable and truly inspiring experience. Looking ahead, we can't wait to connect more students from around the nation to meet veterans in person, just like you, Lindsay, in Washington, D.C., to provide those standing ovations that are so well deserved as veterans arrive in our nation's capital. Our relationship with the honor flight. Sure, please.
I'm so sorry. I almost forgot to say thank you for everything that you guys do with the honor flights. And I can tell you, as a veteran who has done an honor flight, They're going to be more and more important as we move forward. We're looking to get a lot more Vietnam veterans, and they never got welcome home ceremonies. And so let's give them a really great welcome when they get to the memorials. And I appreciate you all for doing that.
No, 100%. I think our relationship with the Honor Flight is something all of us at EF are so immensely proud of, connecting the generations and allowing history to truly come alive in a meaningful and important way. And this really just speaks to the heart of EF and everything that we do. As we close, for everyone else, please take 2 minutes to answer the survey that will pop up. We would love your feedback. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Lindsay. Happy Veterans Day. And everyone enjoy your weekend. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.